My officer husband, Jason Steele, had a sweet little childhood friend named Candy Brooks. She fell from the second floor and got a concussion, and without hesitation, she insisted I had pushed her. To vent his anger on Candy's behalf, Jason ignored my desperate begging and struggling. He ordered the guards to drag me, while I was pregnant, into solitary confinement. When I was finally let out, I was covered in blood. I had lost the baby. Jason seemed to feel a twinge of remorse. He gently held my hand and told me we were still young, that we could have another baby someday. I just let out a cold laugh. There would be no more children between us. That baby? I had deliberately beaten my stomach until I lost it, because I knew both Jason and that unborn child would turn on me. Just like Candy Brooks, they would force me into a corner, make sure I had no way to live or die with dignity. I had already lived one lifetime as prey, as someone easily trampled on. In this life, I would take control before fate could destroy me again. Years later, I became one of the richest and most powerful financial tycoons in the region. And Jason Steele, who in my past life had risen through the ranks with ease, ended up a pitiful, broken man with nothing left. Comrade, your baby suffered a strong impact and is showing signs of a threatened miscarriage. You must stay in bed these next few days. Otherwise, we might not be able to save the child. The voice in my ear came and went. The throbbing pain in my abdomen and all over my body slowly brought my blurred consciousness back. Red slogans on green-painted walls, peeling doors. It looked like something from 40 years ago. But hadn't I already died? Jason had thrown me into prison. After 5 years behind bars, I was diagnosed with terminal cancer and died in agony. If I'm already dead, why am I seeing a scene from 40 years ago? Before I could make sense of it, the door to the hospital room was slammed open. The young man in a military uniform stormed in, radiating cold anger, and charged straight to the bed where I lay. "Lena Carter, how could you be so cruel and push Candy? Do you have any idea she almost..." The words "I didn't" rose to my lips, but I swallowed them. What use was denying it? What use was trying to explain? Last time I denied it. I explained that it wasn't my fault, but Jason never believed me. He only believed Candy Brooks. Jason shouted at me, his face twisted in rage. My gaze fell on the face of a Jason Steele who looked decades younger. In his 20s, he really was handsome. Sharp features, a tall nose bridge, and even those eyes blazing with fury at me were magnetic. In my past life, I had loved that face to death. I devoted myself to him without regret, humbled myself, gave up my dignity, and in the end, I died a wretched death. I had been so naive. Even after being framed by Candy, even after being thrown into prison by Jason, even after being diagnosed with cancer and given only days to live, I still thought about him. Still longed for him. I used to believe it was all Candy's doing and that Jason was just deceived, that he was innocent. Until I knew I didn't have much time left, and begged the doctor treating me to let me see Jason and our son one last time. But they refused me coldly. The doctor looked at me with pity and told me Jason was taken overseas on vacation for her birthday. He didn't have time to see me. He said I should reflect on my mistakes in prison. Even my son sent a message. "If you're going to die, then just die already. Stop embarrassing me. Don't make things harder for my dad." I was already on the brink of death, and with one last breath, I spat up blood and collapsed. I never expected to live again. But here I was, seeing Jason's young face once more. The man I had loved for decades. The man who betrayed me for just as long. The love I once had for him had completely vanished. In my past life, if Jason had only told me honestly that he loved Candy Brooks, no matter how much I loved him, I would have stepped aside and let them be together. But he never told me that. He always insisted he just wanted to repay her kindness, that he saw her as a sister. Yet under that noble excuse of gratitude, he and Candy did everything behind my back, shameless and indecent. My life had been one long tragedy, devoted to someone else's fairy tale, and the pain and despair I felt before dying, it left behind a hatred that I couldn't suppress. I stared at Jason, locking eyes with him. If I could, I wanted to bite him, rip into him, just to release even a fraction of the rage buried inside me. For the innocent, pitiful woman I used to be, Jason didn't notice anything wrong with my expression. He kept shouting, "I never thought you'd be such a vile, shameless woman. Don't think being pregnant will save you, Lena Carter. I'm telling you. This time, I won't let you off the hook, Jason Steele said coldly. I gave a mocking laugh. And how exactly are you planning to do that? I want you to apologize to Candy, and I want you in solitary confinement to reflect seriously on your mistakes. Same old routine. That was exactly how Jason handled it in my previous life too. Two conditions that left me no room to resist. 1. Apologize to Candy Brooks and admit I was wrong. 2. Accept punishment in solitary confinement and reflect on my behavior. Both were mandatory. No one believed my explanations. In the end, I had no choice but to apologize to Candy, admit to something I didn't do. I thought maybe, just maybe, Jason would let me go. For the sake of our 5 years of marriage, or because I was pregnant. But I was far too naive. The day I was discharged from the hospital, Jason heartlessly had the guards send me straight to the isolation chamber. Tears streamed down my face as I begged him. I told him I was pregnant, asked him to consider the child and punish me later instead. But Jason showed no mercy. He said I was vicious and unrepentant, that I had to pay the price for my actions to learn a lesson and never repeat it. 7 days in pitch-black solitary confinement. All I could do was count numbers, waiting to be released. Jason didn't visit once. The guards even forgot I was in there. A pregnant woman locked away like a criminal. It wasn't until Jason returned from accompanying Candy to the Capitol for her medical treatment that he realized I was still locked up. A normal person wouldn't survive 7 days without food or water. When they finally pulled me out, I was in a deep coma. It was a miracle I hadn't died. Dr. Song worked tirelessly for days to save me from the brink. But 7 days without a single drop of water or grain of food had severely damaged my organs. I developed a chronic stomach condition, probably one of the reasons I eventually got terminal cancer. When I was finally released, Jason was briefly overwhelmed with guilt. He treated me unusually well, and I thought maybe he truly loved me. Because I loved him, I forgave him. But later, Candy told me that Jason only treated me nicely because he was afraid I'd report him to his superiors. If I had died in solitary confinement, especially while pregnant, it would have been a political disaster for him. I didn't believe her back then. I kept deluding myself and fell into one toxic cycle after another. Pathetic me, right up until the end of my last life, clung to the illusion that Jason loved me, that he'd only been deceived by Candy Brooks. But in this life, I know better. I remember everything. I will never again be blinded by Jason Steele's facade, because no form of love should ever come wrapped in endless pain. I stared at Jason and said firmly, word for word, I did nothing wrong. I won't apologize, and you have no right to put me in solitary. Jason's face darkened with fury. Are you sure about that? I'm sure. You're so stubborn and ignorant, then don't blame me for what happens next. The veins on Jason's forehead bulged as he turned and barked toward the door. Take Lena Carter to solitary. Let her reflect. The guards came in and dragged me away. In my past life, I cared about appearances. I kept quiet, let them take me, just to save face, for Jason and myself. But not this time. As soon as the guards laid hands on me, I screamed at the top of my lungs. Murder! Jason Steele is trying to kill me and my unborn child for that Mistress Candy Brooks. Help! I'm innocent. Jason never expected me to throw away my dignity and scream like that. Everyone around turned to look. People started whispering. His reputation was in shambles. He had no choice. In a panic, he lunged forward to cover my mouth with his hand. But I was burning with hatred. I bit down on his hand, hard. Blood filled my mouth, thick and metallic. I saw his face contort in pain. Did it hurt? Of course it did. He was bleeding, but that pain was nothing compared to what I'd endured in my last life. I was dragged to solitary under the gaze of a stunned crowd. People pointed and whispered as I passed by. What did Lena Carter do to deserve solitary? I heard she pushed Candy Brooks down the stairs. Candy got seriously hurt. That's why Commander Steele had no choice but to punish her, even though she's his wife. So that's it. Well, I guess she brought it on herself. I don't know. Lena's always been gentle and soft-spoken. Doesn't seem like the kind of person who'd do something so cruel. Isn't she pregnant? Look, her forehead is still bleeding. Commander Steele going this far for an outsider, against his own wife, it's just too heartless. Yeah, Commander Steele really is way too protective of that Candy Brooks. He's a man of strong feelings, very clear about gratitude and grudges. I heard he's just repaying a debt to Candy. Even if that's true, it still feels like too much. Lena Carter is pregnant, after all. Even the law doesn't immediately sentence a pregnant woman to death for murder, let alone in a simple dispute like this. Commander Steele's favoritism toward Candy Brooks is just too obvious. All the murmuring around him made Jason Steele's face go ashen. In his wildest dreams, he never thought someone like me, always gentle and composed, would embarrass him like this in public. After I was thrown into solitary, he ordered the guards to lock the door behind me. Lena Carter, I never imagined you'd be such a disgraceful woman, he spat. Originally, I planned to keep you in here for 7 days, but clearly that's not enough. Make it 2 weeks. With that, Jason stormed off in a rage. The door slammed shut. Darkness swallowed the room. In my previous life, I had endured 7 horrifying days in this very cell, lost consciousness, nearly froze to death. And just when I had finally recovered, Candy Brooks framed me again, leading to a premature birth. I suffered terribly to deliver that cursed child, bled so much I had to have my uterus removed. I poured all the love I had left into that child, my only one. But that little monster turned out to be just like his father, cruel and shameless. He actually liked Candy, hated me, his own mother. Remembering all the suffering I endured in my past life, a cold smile crept across my lips. That vile little thing? I wouldn't give him the chance to survive this time. I clenched my fists, and then one punch at a time I started striking my belly. Half an hour later, my scream shook the walls. People came running and unlocked the door. They found me lying in a pool of blood on the floor. I had miscarried. Covered in blood, I was rushed to the hospital. Jason had been sitting at Candy's bedside when he heard the guard report that I had lost the baby. He leapt up without hesitation and rushed out of the room, completely missing the satisfied smirk on Candy's face as she watched him go. After the surgery, I was wheeled out of the operating room and immediately spotted Jason waiting with a grim expression on his face. He stepped forward, trying to take my hand. "Get out," I said, cold and clear. Jason froze and stepped back, stunned, watching the nurse push me past him. After the IV drip was in place, Jason actually followed me into the room again, this time with a rare expression of sorrow on his face. Was he grieving the loss of the baby? Yeah, right. In my past life, that bastard son of his constantly said that if it weren't for his existence, Jason would have already divorced me to be with Candy. He believed Jason only stayed in this cold, broken marriage out of guilt. So now that the baby was gone, Jason should have been happy. Relieved. I watched as he slowly approached my hospital bed. I looked at him, my expression devoid of joy, of sadness, completely numb. He reached out, perhaps to touch me, but the coldness in my eyes must have been too much. He hesitated, then pulled his hand back. In a stiff voice, he said, "Lena, I didn't expect this to happen. Just rest and recover for now. We're still young. We'll have another baby." Another baby? I almost laughed out loud. Was that meant to comfort me? After all, word of my miscarriage in solitary must have already spread throughout the entire base. Commander Steele, so revered for his discipline and integrity, had shown zero mercy to his own pregnant wife. I could only imagine what kind of gossip was flying around now, especially with another woman involved. Jason's open favoritism toward Candy was no secret. I figured rumors had already started, and I would gladly pour more fuel on that fire. As I was thinking this, a nurse rushed in and called out to Jason, flustered. "Commander Steele, Comrade Brooks fainted." Apparently, Candy had found out I miscarried and tried to come visit me, but her body was so weak she only made it a few steps before collapsing in the hallway. This was her favorite trick. In my last life, it worked like a charm every single time. But this time, things might not go her way. Jason immediately ran off in a panic, leaving me lying in bed sobbing and screaming. My cries were so loud that nurses, doctors, and even patients from the next room came to see what was happening. When they realized I had lost my baby, they all tried to comfort me with kind words. While crying and wiping my tears, I began telling the nurses, doctors, and curious patients everything that Candy Brooks and Jason Steele had done behind my back. Ever since Candy showed up, the man listed on my marriage certificate, Jason, had completely drifted away from me. Jason arranged a job for her. gave her more than half his salary to spend however she pleased. Candy clung to him constantly, deliberately provoking me, trying to stir up conflict between us. She always found excuses to pull him away, even in the middle of the night, saying she was afraid of thunder or rain, and had him stay with her all night long. And then she even had the nerve to say she was going to get rid of the baby in my belly, to force me and Jason into a divorce. Everything I said was true. People in the base had seen it with their own eyes. They just hadn't known that the two of them were also spending time alone at night, a man and a woman, behind closed doors. As I spoke, I saw the looks in everyone's eyes begin to change. Add to that the fact that I had just lost my baby. While Jason ignored me completely and rushed to Candy's side without hesitation, people couldn't help but notice. The nurses, doctors, and patients all heard every word I said. From the looks on their faces, I knew it wouldn't be long before news of Jason's affair with Candy spread like wildfire through the entire military base. Jason was summoned by his superior. He told them he and Candy were clean, that he was only helping her out of gratitude. His superior believed him. But the gossip outside was getting out of hand. That leader had been Jason's longtime mentor and liked him a lot. Still, he warned Jason to watch his reputation and keep his distance from Candy. When Jason returned to the hospital, his face was like thunder. As soon as he closed the door, he glared at me. "Lena Carter, you almost ruined me. Because of your impulsiveness, my superiors talked to me. Do you realize what kind of damage that could do to my career?" I curled my lips slightly. "Good. I hope it does affect you. In my last life, I endured everything in silence: humiliation, pain, betrayal, while Jason and Candy lived carefree and unbothered. After going through such a hellish life, how could I let him sail smoothly to success in this one? I was reborn, and I intended to make life a little more uncomfortable for my enemies. Jason didn't know what I was thinking. He thought I still loved him deeply, still cared about his future more than my own. He assumed I'd follow his every instruction without complaint. He warned me, "From now on, you need to clarify those rumors one by one. Let everyone know that there's nothing between me and Candy, that our relationship is purely like brother and sister." I tilted my head and looked at him. "Really? Brother and sister? That's strange, because as far as I know, you two don't share a single drop of blood." Jason's expression shifted at my mocking smile. "If I had any feelings for Candy, do you think I would have married you?" He snapped. That was exactly how he brainwashed me in my last life, and like a fool, I had believed him. Now, hearing that same tired excuse again, I couldn't help but laugh. Cold, sarcastic laughter. Jason's face darkened. "Lena, this isn't the time to be petty or jealous. I'm in this mess because you wouldn't listen. I'm warning you, cut it out. If you keep this up, I'll divorce you." "Divorce? That's exactly what I wanted." "Great," I said without missing a beat. "Let's do it. Let's get divorced, right now." Jason wasn't expecting that. His expression froze. "What nonsense are you talking about?" "I'm not talking nonsense," I replied calmly. "Why should I share my husband with another woman? Let's just end it cleanly. You go your way. I'll go mine. We each find our own future." His face turned red with anger. "What are you saying, Lena? We're in a military marriage? You think divorce is that simple? So what? You plan to keep sacrificing yourself for a lifetime? Or maybe you want your precious Candy to stay the third party forever." The term third party didn't even exist in that era. Jason blinked, confused. "Third party? What does that mean?" I didn't bother explaining. Instead, I looked him in the eye. "If you want me to believe you, then from now on you are not allowed to have any contact with Candy. Can you do that?" To my surprise, Jason agreed. "From now on, you handle everything related to Candy," he said. "I promise I won't see her in private again." This change was something that never happened in my previous life. Jason Steele, for the sake of his promotion, had weighed the pros and cons and chose to back down. It was exactly what I expected of him. But Candy Brooks didn't have that kind of awareness. I was sure she wouldn't sit still for long if Jason stopped seeing her. She'd definitely try to stir things up soon, and I was looking forward to it. After all, since I had been given a second chance at life, I intended to reclaim at least part of the pain and humiliation I suffered before. Candy didn't know that Jason had decided to keep his distance from her to protect his career. So she went on playing the same old tricks. pretending to be sick and pitiful, lying in a hospital bed and waiting for Jason to come see her, just like she did in the past. But days passed and Jason never came. Unable to bear it any longer, Candy started having others pass on messages, exaggerating her condition and trying to guilt Jason into visiting. When Jason heard that Candy had supposedly coughed up blood, he was in a panic. But his superior had given him a strict order. He didn't dare defy it. So in the end, he came to find me instead. Candy, convinced Jason was finally going to show up, was full of anticipation. But when I walked in, instead of the man she longed for, her face twisted in fury. "What are you doing here?" she spat. "I came to see you," I said lightly. "Wanted to see what kind of tricks you're up to now." I strolled casually around the room. "Didn't they say you were dying? Funny, you look perfectly fine to me, lips red, teeth white, not a single sign of weakness. Candy, don't you think this whole fake sick act is getting a little outdated?" Exposed, Candy dropped the act. "Lena Carter, losing your baby must have felt awful, huh?" Her smile turned cruel. "I was the one who caused it, but Jason doesn't care about you at all. He only trusts me. For me, he's willing to wrong his own wife. You must feel terrible about that." "You're overthinking it," I said with a calm smile. "If losing a child means Jason will stay away from a disgusting woman like you, then it was worth it." "Candy, you probably don't know yet. Jason's not going to see you again." She froze. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said. Word's already out. Everyone's saying you and Jason have an inappropriate relationship. He's trying to protect his reputation now, which means keeping his distance from you." Candy looked stunned. "What did you do, Lena?" "Don't worry," I said, smiling as I walked over to her bed, standing above her. "I'll explain it all. Candy, I know exactly what kind of filthy schemes are in that mind of yours. You wanted to kill the child in my womb. You wanted to break me and Jason apart so you could take my place. So I helped you, gave you exactly what you wanted." I leaned in, eyes cold. "Here's the truth. I was the one who ended my pregnancy. I was also the one who spread the rumors about you and Jason." "No, that's impossible." Candy's voice trembled. "You're insane. You loved that baby. You loved Jason. You were obsessed with his reputation." The disbelief in her eyes turned to sheer rage. She understood how serious the consequences of what I'd done could be, for both her and Jason. "You vicious woman, you used your own flesh and blood to get back at me? You're a monster." I smiled coldly. "Compared to you, I'm nothing." "Lena Carter," she hissed, "starting now, I'm going to make you feel all the pain you once made me suffer." "Oh really?" I raised a brow. "Then let's see who wins this time." With a sudden scream, Candy raised her hand and slapped herself twice across the face, loud and sharp. The sides of her face immediately swelled, and blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. She even licked the blood with her tongue before glaring at me with murderous hatred. Then she screamed at the top of her lungs, "Lena Carter, hit me. Help." With that, she jumped off the bed and ran barefoot toward the door, but she only managed a couple of steps before I grabbed her by the hair and yanked her backward. She hadn't expected me to retaliate physically. In the past, I was the nice one, the meek, soft-hearted wife who avoided confrontation at all costs. But not anymore. With both hands gripping her hair, I pulled with everything I had. Candy twisted in pain, her face contorted in agony. As she screamed, I slammed her head against the wall. Once, twice, again. She never saw it coming. My brutality stunned her. She shrieked until finally, the pain overwhelmed her and she passed out. I stared down at her unconscious body on the floor. I wiped my face a few times and quickly let the tears pour down. Nurses in the hallway who heard the noise rushed over. When they saw me crying like that, tear-streaked and completely devastated, they immediately stopped and asked, "Comrade Carter, what's wrong? Who did this to you?" They were all familiar faces. During my hospitalization after the miscarriage, many of the doctors and nurses had come to sympathize with me. And none of them liked Candy Brooks. She had been pretending to be sick while standing around in a hospital bed for days. Everyone could see through her act, and her arrogant attitude only made them more irritated. I sobbed so hard I could barely breathe. "I'm done for. I'm absolutely done for." Candy, she slapped herself and pretended I hit her. And now she's lying on the floor pretending to be unconscious. The nurses exchanged glances. Candy had a bad reputation. Everyone knew she was only able to throw her weight around the hospital because Jason Steele was protecting her. They already disliked her self-righteous behavior, and once they realized she was the one interfering in my marriage, they despised her even more. I kept crying. What am I supposed to do? What am I going to do now? There's no way I can prove my innocence. Even if I jumped into the Yellow River, I couldn't wash this off. If Jason finds out, he'll definitely blame me. I'm done. I'm so done. One of the nurses put a comforting hand on my shoulder. That's enough, Comrade Carter. Don't be afraid. We'll testify for you. Thank you. I sniffled. But she's still lying on the floor faking it. What should we do about that? We'll go in with you and take a look. With several nurses at my side, I returned to the room. Candy was still lying there, pretending to be unconscious. The nurses all looked down at her with visible disgust. All right, that's enough. Cut the act and get up, one of them said coldly. But of course, the unconscious Candy didn't respond. Still crying, I walked over, crouched down beside her, and reached out to touch her. Come on, drop the act. Get up. As I leaned in, I slipped the sewing needle I'd hidden in my hand deep into her lower back. It was a heavy-duty needle I'd brought specifically for her, at least 6 or 7 centimeters long. Anyone could imagine the pain of something like that being jabbed into your flesh. Candy, who was supposedly unconscious, screamed out in agony the moment it pierced her skin. As her eyes flew open in pain, I quickly withdrew the needle and hid it in my sleeve. The pain made Candy bolt upright. The moment her gaze met mine and saw the smug, malicious smile in my eyes, her rage boiled over. Without thinking, she raised her hand and tried to slap me across the face. But a nearby nurse grabbed her wrist mid-swing. What the hell are you doing? Several other nurses immediately rushed forward and held her down. Candy froze, overwhelmed. She had always been cunning and manipulative, able to read people like a book. But after that brief moment of shock, she quickly switched back to her usual pitiful demeanor. She looked at the nurses holding her down with tearful eyes. Lena Carter hit me. She slapped me. She grabbed my hair and bashed my head against the wall. She assaulted me on purpose. I want to call the police. She thought that by exposing what happened, she'd gain support, but the nurses only looked at her with disgust. Enough, Comrade Brooks. Stop acting. We know you're putting on a show and trying to frame Comrade Carter. That kind of mindset is unacceptable. You need to fix it immediately. I'm not faking, Candy insisted. My head really hurts and my face is killing me. And my back, someone stabbed me. Of course it hurt. That needle had gone deep, but no one believed her. The nurses stood firmly by my side. Don't worry, Comrade Carter. We'll testify for you. It's clear that Candy staged this whole thing. Candy's head throbbed, her face stung, and the spot I stabbed her with the needle was burning. But it didn't matter. No one was going to believe her now. The nurses began shouting about calling the authorities. One even pulled out Candy's pathetic medical file. You're not even sick. Faking illness to occupy a hospital bed. This is going into our report. Candy deflated. She had only ever managed to manipulate Jason Steele. Because Jason pitied her, favored her. But these people weren't family, weren't friends. They didn't owe her anything, and they sure weren't going to cover for her. To the people watching, everything was clear. Candy knew the longer she made a scene, the worse it would get for her. So she swallowed her anger and stayed quiet. As I was escorted out of the room by the nurses, I happened to glance back at Candy and gave her a smug, provocative smile. That was just the beginning of the drama Candy Brooks had in store. After giving her a small dose of what she deserved, I returned home in high spirits, only to find the ever-busy Jason Steele actually at home for once. He had bought my favorite tangerines and some candy. As soon as I walked in, he asked, "How's Candy doing?" Wow. He really was concerned, wasn't he? If he hadn't been worried about jeopardizing his promotion, I bet he would have rushed to the hospital to see her himself. Without expression, I answered flatly, "She's doing just fine. Still has the energy to frame me, after all." Jason paused, confused. "What do you mean?" "I went to see her just like you asked," I replied. "Even brought fruit," but Candy threw the fruit across the room, slapped herself in the face, pretended to faint, and tried to accuse me of assault. If it weren't for the nurses who saw it all with their own eyes, I'd be in serious trouble today. "That's impossible. Jason muttered, his face saying loud and clear that he didn't believe me. If you don't believe me, go ask the nurses. Not one, not two. 4 of them saw it happen. Jason fell silent, a rare thing for him. Why would she do that? He finally asked. You really don't know? I stared at him. She told me I'm not good enough to be your wife, that she's the one who deserves you. Jason's face darkened at my words. Lena, not this again. How many times have I told you? Candy and I are like siblings. There's nothing between us. I laughed bitterly. But you're not actually siblings, are you? Whatever the case, he said sternly, I have a clear conscience. And yet, he still had the nerve to warn me. You'd better behave. Don't make trouble for me. Maybe realizing he'd been too harsh, he softened his tone. Lena, just listen to me. Be good, okay? About the baby, I was wrong, I'm sorry, we'll have another one in the future. He said it like giving me a child was some kind of reward, some great mercy. But what he didn't know was, I was no longer the same woman. I would never have another child with Jason Steele. He was dreaming. After the beating I gave her, Candy really did end up with a concussion. She had to stay in the hospital for several days, but even then, she didn't stop her scheming. She used the hospital phone to call Jason multiple times, even had people deliver messages to him. But when none of that worked, she panicked and showed up at our door in person after being discharged. She knocked on our door, acting like a fragile porcelain doll, only to walk in and see Jason sitting at the table, having lunch with me. Right as he was placing a piece of rib into my bowl, Candy froze. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Jason, are you really going to ignore me now? Her swollen face and pitiful expression might have tugged at Jason's heartstrings. Candy, how could I not care about you? I've just been really busy lately. Then she threw herself into his arms, crying. I thought you didn't want me anymore, Jason. I was so scared you'd abandon me. You promised my parents you'd take care of me. The mention of Candy's parents, who had done Jason a great favor in the past, made his face flash with guilt. I had thought Candy would use this opportunity to accuse me, to rat me out for what I did at the hospital. But she'd gotten smarter. She didn't say a word about it. Instead, she played the nostalgia card, pulling at Jason's emotions. Then, right in front of him, she turned to me, crying. I'm so sorry, Lena. I didn't mean to make things difficult for you. Once I recover, I'll ask for a transfer. I'll leave so I don't interfere in your relationship anymore. And with that, she actually dropped to her knees in front of me, bowing over and over, begging me for forgiveness. I had to admit, this strategy, retreating in order to advance, was a clever one. Jason's heart immediately softened. He rushed over to help her up. Lena's not the kind of woman to hold a grudge, he said. Candy, you're not going anywhere. Stay here, it's easier for me to take care of you this way. Candy let herself be lifted by Jason's hand, looking moved as she poured out memories of the past. I couldn't take another second. I stood up and walked away. Inside, I knew exactly what Candy was doing. She had learned her lesson. She knew not to act too soon, not to snitch impulsively. Instead, she was playing the long game, getting Jason to feel sorry for her, drawing him back in piece by piece. I wandered outside for a few hours, and when I returned, Candy Brooks was gone. Jason Steele was sitting alone in the living room, and as soon as he saw me come in, he said, Lena, let's talk. Sure, I nodded and sat down across from him. What do you want to talk about? Candy. Jason reached out and took my hand. Lena, I really do see Candy as nothing more than a sister. Her parents did so much for me. I owe them more than I can ever repay, and she's their only daughter. So I have to take care of her. That's fine, I said without emotion. If you feel the need to repay them, I won't stop you. You can do whatever you want with Candy. You don't need to inform me. I don't care. Don't say that to hurt me, Jason said, sounding frustrated. You've misunderstood. You think there's something inappropriate between me and Candy, but I swear, there's nothing like that. I only see her as a sister. The only person I want to spend the rest of my life with is you. In my previous life, if I'd heard such a passionate declaration, I would have fallen head over heels for it, believed him with all my heart, blindly and willingly. But I'm not that foolish woman anymore. I'm no longer the hopeless romantic who thought love was everything. I pulled my hand out of his grasp. Got it. I know what you mean. Anything else? Jason looked stunned by my lack of reaction. Then he reached for my hand again and held it tightly. Lena, I'm heading out on a mission soon. I'll be gone for a while. While I'm away, I need you and Candy to get along. She's promised to listen to you, and I'm counting on you to take care of her. I'm leaving her in your hands. Just wait for me to come back. It almost sounded like he was handing her over to me like a responsibility. I raised an eyebrow. All right, I'll be sure to take good care of your dear Candy. Jason led his team on a mission to the south. Before leaving, he reminded both me and Candy multiple times to get along peacefully. Candy and I both nodded in forced agreement. But peaceful coexistence? That wasn't going to happen. I knew Candy would never give up, and neither would I. When Jason came back from this mission, there would be a reckoning. One of us would win. One of us would fall. The determination in our eyes was mutual, hers and mine. On the first day Jason was gone, Candy and I put on a show of perfect harmony. She called me sis sweetly and helped around the house, cooking and cleaning like a devoted little helper. On the second day, she bought me a new outfit and a pair of shoes. She even invited me to see a movie. She clung to my arm with affection, calling me sis in front of everyone. It was her way of putting on a performance, showing everyone how close we supposedly were. We went in and out together, supporting each other, looking like the ideal sister-in-law duo. All the previous drama seemed to vanish as if it had never happened. On the 10th day of Jason's absence, Candy knocked on my door bright and early, bringing me breakfast. Sis, I've got the day off today. Let's go for a walk by the river, okay? Sure, I agreed pleasantly. She had already packed lunch and snacks, then linked arms with me as we headed out the door. Whenever we ran into someone we knew, Candy would greet them warmly and announce that we were going on an outing together. By the time we reached the edge of town, she'd made sure a dozen people had heard about it. We brought our food and rode a shared bike all the way to the small river nearby. Just before we arrived, I clutched my stomach and said I needed to use the bathroom, then walked away for a bit. When I returned over an hour later, Candy was already waiting by the riverbank. She looked irritated, pacing back and forth, her eyes filled with impatience. I even heard her muttering under her breath. I cleared my throat. Candy, sorry to keep you waiting. The moment she saw me, her whole demeanor shifted. The irritation disappeared as if I'd imagined it. Sis, look how beautiful the scenery is here, she said sweetly. Let me borrow someone's camera and take a few photos of you. I agreed without hesitation and stood by the riverbank, letting her snap a few shots. Several times she laughed playfully and lunged toward me like she wanted to grab or hug me. But standing at the river's edge, I was careful, always stepping aside just in time. I laughed freely and fully, while Candy Brooks' smile grew colder and colder. After a few more failed attempts to lunge at me by the river, she gave up, for the moment, and laid out a picnic blanket. She unpacked the food and deliberately placed the blanket right at the river's edge. She positioned herself on the side facing the water and left the edge closest to the river for me. I'm starving, sis. Come eat, Candy said cheerfully, handing me food with a warm smile. I didn't take it. I just stared straight at her. Go on, say it. What are you really planning? What could I possibly be planning? She replied with a fake laugh. I lowered my voice. I know you were trying to find a chance to push me into the river, drag me in with you and make it look like I pushed you. Now that didn't work, you're trying this. I watched her face go pale. Let me guess, what did you put in the food? Something to set me up? Candy, do you really think I'd be dumb enough to let my guard down around a venomous snake like you after everything I know? She sighed. So you figured it out? I thought I could fool you for a few more days. Guess you're smarter than I gave you credit for. The mask dropped. Candy no longer bothered pretending. Lena Carter, since you know, I won't hide it anymore. Today is the day you die. With that, she lunged at me. I was sitting with my back to the river. Candy pounced, dragging me with her as we both fell into the water. This was exactly how she framed me in my past life. Same river, same setup. She had lured me out, shoved me into the river, and claimed I tried to kill her. It worked. Everyone believed her. I was accused of attempted murder and sent to prison, betrayed by Jason Steele himself, who, righteous and dutiful, chose justice over his own wife. Back then, Candy's plan had unfolded 30 years later than it did now. But I'm not the same Lena Carter I used to be. When she invited me to the river this time, I already knew what she was planning. I knew she'd arranged for witnesses to accuse me. So I let her carry out her little trap, just so I could spring mine. The moment we hit the water, I grabbed her by the hair and forced her head down, holding her underwater until she gulped down mouthfuls. Her eyes rolled back in her head, and just as she passed out, I dragged her toward the shore and slammed her head against the jagged rocks. Again and again. Blood streamed down her once beautiful face, but it still wasn't enough. In my past life, I lost my uterus because of her. I could never have children again. That pain, the kind that cuts into your soul, was something I'd never forget. So in this life, Candy would have to experience that pain too. A piece of rebar I'd hidden nearby was already in place. It pierced through her lower body as I forced her onto it. I watched as blood spilled from her and slowly dyed the river red. Only then did I drag her by the hair toward the shore and scream for help, like my life depended on it. Her so-called witnesses showed up right on cue. Candy was rushed to the hospital. I lay back on the riverbank, a cold smile curling on my lips. Now it was Jason Steele's turn to put on a show. He returned a week later. The moment he heard that Candy had been injured, he rushed to the hospital. She had survived, but just like me in my past life, she'd lost the ability to be a mother. And her fate was even worse than mine. Her face was ruined, covered in deep scars and pitted wounds. Candy sobbed hysterically in Jason's arms, accusing me of trying to kill her. She had been waiting for this day, dreaming of it. But it wasn't how she imagined it. She was disfigured. I was untouched. Of course she regretted it. She couldn't understand how I had fought back so violently, couldn't make sense of how the predator had become the prey. But it was too late. She had no way out now. Candy was determined to destroy me. She would stop at nothing to make me pay, to weaponize Jason's guilt and sense of duty, and make him take responsibility for her. And just like in the last life, Jason exploded with rage when he heard I was the one who had done this to her. Candy even managed to find the same kind of people she had used before, willing witnesses, who all pointed the finger at me in unison. Their testimonies sounded convincing. They said that ever since Jason left, I had been bullying Candy Brooks, that Candy had tried to win me over, bought me clothes and shoes, did housework willingly, even invited me on a riverside picnic, all just to change my attitude toward her. But I, supposedly deranged and heartless, turned around and tried to kill her. They claimed they saw me with their own eyes holding Candy underwater, with both witnesses and evidence. I was once again, just like in my past life, branded as the villain. And just like before, there seemed to be only one road ahead: prison. Jason Steele was furious over my viciousness. His heart ached for Candy's suffering, and he swore to her that he would make things right. Meanwhile, I stayed at home, waiting for the wrath I knew was coming. In the quiet days leading up to Jason's return, I had already packed my bags. I sold most of the furniture in the house, even the bicycle. I stitched all the money into the lining of my clothes and had a detailed plan laid out. I was ready to end this once and for all. The door burst open with a loud kick, and Jason stormed in. He grabbed me by the collar and yanked me off the ground. "Lena Carter, why did you do it?" I pried his fingers off my shirt. "Jason, what if I told you this had nothing to do with me, that the whole thing was Candy's setup? Would you believe me?" "Bullshit," Jason snapped. "Don't even try." He was livid, just like last time. "Candy can't swim, and you can. Do you really think she'd be stupid enough to plot something that puts her in that much danger?" As always, Jason chose to believe that Candy was incapable of risking her own safety. He questioned me angrily. "And even if she did set you up, why would she let herself get disfigured? Why would she give up her ability to have children?" I scoffed. "That's easy. Her plan failed. Things got messy. It wasn't supposed to go down that way." "You're insane, Lena. You think I'm obligated to protect you? That I'll blindly defend you no matter what you do? You committed a crime. This is prison time we're talking about." "Of course I know," I said calmly. "But I'm not the one who caused this. Candy brought this on herself." "You still won't admit it?" Jason shouted. "You're more ruthless and shameless than I ever imagined. If you insist on throwing everything away, don't blame me. I'm not letting this go." "Good," I replied coldly. "I've been waiting for this." It played out exactly like in my past life. I had no expectations left, but somehow my heart still ached just a little. So I asked, "How are you planning to punish me this time, Jason?" Enraged by my indifference, he kicked the sofa. "You're going to the hospital. You're going to apologize to Candy." "I'm not apologizing." "Then get ready for prison. I'm telling you, Lena Carter, I will never allow a vicious woman like you to be my wife. Once you're locked up, I'm filing for divorce." "Perfect. I've been hoping for that." I pulled out the divorce agreement I had already prepared. "Here, sign it. Let's get it over with." Jason looked at the document, then at me. You planned this?" "You knew I would ask for a divorce?" "No reason needed," I said. "Just sign it." Jason, seething with rage, snatched the pen and signed. Then he flung the signed papers at me. "Here, as you wish." I bent down, picked up the divorce agreement, and stood up. Jason had already stormed out. At the door, he turned around and threw out one last threat. "Just wait. The police will be here for you soon." I gave a cold laugh. Holding the agreement, I headed straight for the Civil Affairs office. An hour later, I walked out with 2 divorce certificates in hand. The smoothness of it all gave me a strange sense of relief. Now, the only thing left was the police investigation. But I wasn't afraid. Candy wasn't the only one who could produce witnesses. I'd lived an entire life. I knew how to prepare better than she ever could. The police didn't even get the chance to come to me. I went to them first, bringing my evidence in hand and filing a report. Everything I presented was solid. Candy knew I could swim, so she'd prepared food laced with sleeping pills. Her plan had been to render me unconscious and let me drown. But I had seen through it, and because I did, she was the one who had to improvise. She had planned to fake a drowning incident, me, the strong swimmer, dragging her into the water. But I knew exactly what Candy Brooks was up to, so I prepared witnesses in advance, nurses from the hospital. They were the first to send the food Candy had laced with sleeping pills for testing. They also saw her push me into the river with their own eyes and confirmed that she had purchased a large amount of sedatives herself. As for how Candy ended up so severely injured, that was simple. She couldn't swim, and she had terrible luck. She smashed her face on a hard rock and was impaled by a floating steel bar that just happened to pierce her uterus. Rocks and steel bars don't talk. There were no fingerprints, no forensic evidence that could prove anyone had done it to her on purpose. This time, Candy had no way to fight back. I submitted my evidence and accused her of attempted murder. The case against her was clear and undeniable. Because she had lost her uterus and was physically weak, the authorities decided to wait until she recovered before formally arresting her. As for me, now divorced from Jason Steele, I had no attachments left. Without hesitation, I bought a train ticket and headed south. Punishing Candy wasn't my end goal. She was despicable, yes, but Jason wasn't innocent either. Just getting rid of Candy wasn't enough. I knew what would come next, Jason's downfall. Without me to help him as I had in our previous life, Jason's future was going to be a disaster. I waited, calmly, for karma to find him. Once I was gone, I poured all of myself into building my career. Knowing what was coming gave me a huge advantage. Starting from nothing, I climbed my way up, step by step. In less than 5 years, I achieved considerable success. With the wave of economic reform sweeping across China, I was among the first to seize the opportunity. I launched a business and expanded quickly. Over the next decade, I became the country's first self-made female billionaire. I opened branches across the nation, expanded my reach, and used my wealth for charitable work. I never imagined I'd run into Jason Steele again, during a charity event in Jiangcheng, of all places. More than 10 years had passed. Jason had gone from a dashing military officer to a man in a wheelchair. I stood on stage giving a speech. He sat in the audience, staring up at me. Our eyes met. Mine were calm and knowing. His were filled with shock. I watched his lips move. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read them clearly. Lena. After the donation ceremony, I got into my car to leave, but Jason rolled his wheelchair in front of my vehicle, blocking the way. Lena, do you know how long I've been looking for you? I looked at him silently. Why? I never meant to send you to prison. I never meant to divorce you. I was just angry. I tried to convince Candy to drop the charges, but by the time I did, you were already gone. So this was his long overdue apology? His regret? Even if it was, why should I accept it? Seeing me stand there coldly, unmoved, Jason's face dimmed. He mumbled, "Lena, I didn't know Candy would turn out to be so vile. I was deceived by her all along." Jason Steele, in his 20s, had truly been a handsome man. But now, I looked him square in the eyes and said slowly, "Can you move out of the way? I'm in a hurry to meet my husband and son. Today is our 6th wedding anniversary." "You're married?" Jason asked in a stunned whisper. "You even have a child?" His face turned ashen as he backed his wheelchair away. My driver started the engine. Jason suddenly called out, "Lena, I had a dream. You loved me deeply. You never gave up on me. We had a son, didn't we?" I rolled down the window and looked at him with a smile. "I bet your dream had a few other things in it too," I said. "Like how you ignored me for Candy? Like how you sent me to prison because of her? Like how your ungrateful son was just as cruel and biased as you?" Jason's face went pale as snow. I smiled sweetly. "And didn't your dream include that moment you were gravely injured while trying to earn a commendation? That Candy got down on her knees to beg a famous doctor to save you, and you were so grateful, you repaid her for the rest of your life?" Jason's eyes widened. "How do you know that?" "You don't need to worry about that," I said. "But let me tell you something. You know why, in this life, after your heroic act, you're stuck in that wheelchair? Why you never got back on your feet? It's because I didn't travel hundreds of miles to beg some medical expert to save you, like I did in your dream. So that's why you ended up paralyzed. So in your last life, it wasn't Candy who saved you, it was me." "No wonder," I said, laughing coldly. "Jason Steele, did you also dream of me getting diagnosed with terminal cancer and dying miserably in prison? What were you thinking, Jason? You must have been relieved, right? After all, once I was dead, you could finally marry Candy openly and guilt-free." "No, that's not true. I didn't know you would die," he shouted, panicked. I thought you were faking it. By the time I got back, you were already." I regretted it. I really did." "Is that supposed to be your belated regret? What am I supposed to do with that now, Jason?" he murmured. "Lena, I know now. Everything was Candy's fault. I didn't let her off easy. I punished her. She just got out of prison, and she's living a miserable life." "That's good to hear," I said flatly. I rolled up the window and instructed my driver to go. As the car pulled away, Jason in his wheelchair grew smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror. Watching him like that, broken and hollow, I finally let out a long breath of relief. For the first time in this life, I felt truly unburdened. I had no regrets. Just then, the large car phone next to me rang. I picked it up. It was my husband calling. His warm voice came through the line. "Lena, our son and I are waiting for you." "I'm almost home," I said, smiling. No one lives forever in the past. Jason Steele was just a chapter that had long closed. Now I had a husband who loved me and an adorable son. In this life, I would never again depend on a man or believe in one. I would be my own queen.